Hey there, this is David Drury, and you're listening to Not That Kind of Christian. This is where we take on tough topics with heart, humor, and hope, and we try to make sense of faith in everyday life and all that. Today we're reflecting on something that wasn't in anyone's lives 20 years ago, and that's social media. Now, some Christians mindlessly use social media. They kind of dump countless hours into it without a second thought of how it's impacting them. Don't worry, I'm not talking about specifically you right now, unless you're scrolling as you're listening. Other Christians think social media is like the worst thing to hit humanity since the A-bomb, and it's like avoid this like the plague. So there's kind of two poles. But my guests today are not those kinds of Christians. I want to introduce you to people today that I really enjoy, and I think you're going to like learning from and hearing from. First is Mark Forrester. He's logged on here as the Chief Communications Officer, said that wrong, for the Assemblies of God, and he's also the general editor of the book Trending Up, Social Media Strategies for Today's Church. Welcome to the pod, Mark. It's great to have you here.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, great. And we also have Gloria Lopez, who's entered the chat. She's the Director of Marketing and Communications at Converge. Good to have you here, Gloria.
So excited to be here. Excited about the conversation.
Yeah, this will be fun. Okay, so we want to stop scrolling for a moment here and ask ourselves some questions about social media in our lives. And I want to get a sense, first of all, so our audience knows a little more about each of you. Gloria, maybe you can start. What role does social media have in your professional and personal life? How does it fit in?
Yeah. Professionally, it's in everything. I mean, as a marketing and communications director, I work for Converge National. So Converge is 10 U.S. regions that are all autonomous. So they have their own social media channels as well. But then I have the job of really collaborating with each of those regions and with those of our global workers that are in 5 different countries as well. And really just painting that big picture. So social media is everything to us. On a personal note, it says it on my Instagram bio. I use it as my family scrapbook, so I am not on as often. When it becomes your own profession, it's like, I don't got time for it at home.
Yeah. You leave some of that at the office, but that's great. And I love seeing your family scrapbook too, seeing how the kids are growing up. So how about you, Mark? Where does social media play in your professional and personal life?
Sure. So professionally, I think I'm going to echo a lot of what Gloria said. There's the role of kind of bringing cohesion. We also have autonomous districts in the Assemblies of God. We have 66 here in the U.S. And then at our national office, a lot of like church ministries that have specific focus here and there. With our social media teams that are part of the communications department, we're communicating on behalf of the Assemblies of God key stories about the movement. We're trying to be a positive voice to point people to Jesus through social media. And again, to borrow from Gloria there, it's kind of, the plumber who comes home and, has a broken sink. It's something that I feel like I don't have much energy for on a personal level at the end of the day. But I think, sometimes you see the great positive impact of social media, and then you also see the negative drawback. And so for me, there's been kind of a trend to move away in recent years on a personal level. And I'm sure we'll get into some of those reasons as we get deeper into this conversation.
Yeah, and that's really why I thought it'd be helpful to talk to you too in particular, because I think you have this sort of inside and out perspective on social media. Like it's important to your professional lives, but you also are a personal user of things, and you've also been around it long enough. You didn't just start doing this in the last year. You guys have been around this a long time and seen it for really since its early days. So because it hasn't been around that long, that doesn't necessarily make us old. I am the oldest one here, but I do remember when it was new, for sure. So Gloria, talk about some typical social media habits that people have, and maybe realities you wish everyday users might might understand or need to understand about how these social media platforms shape us in
Yeah.
ways that might even be worrisome?
Yeah. Absolutely. When I think about everyday users, even, I'm a mom of three boys, and my oldest right now is 11 years old, and he's constantly asking for a phone, and he's constantly
Mm.
asking for, like, when can I get my Instagram account? And, when it first opened, I remember when Facebook first started. It's when I was going into college, and it started with more of the Ivy League college users, and I felt like an outsider because my sister-in-law had it. She went to one of those Ivy League schools, and I'm like, I want Facebook, I want Facebook. And the whole purpose for it was community. It was really to establish community and belonging and all of that. And it still has somewhat of that sense, but it's feels out of control when you're in there.
Mm.
I mean, as a
Mm.
parent, um, I have to really counsel my son who doesn't understand what I'm trying to explain to him, that social media is really defining or trying to define who we are. There's times where we're scrolling on our phones, and after you're done, you get this sense of anxiety, or you get this sense of envy, and you didn't even ask for it. You didn't look for it. But the whole algorithm is feeding these things to you, and the more you dwell on these things, the more it pops up. And so, if I could coach anyone, number one, you shouldn't go into social media without a purpose.
Hmm.
When I go to the store, some people think I love shopping. I really don't. I get all these hand-me-downs from my sister-in-law, from my mom. I don't shop for myself. Thankfully, they have good style. But if I'm going to this store, I have a purpose. I want this, I'm going in, I'm getting out. And I think that's a good strategy when you're going into social media. I like to listen to podcasts. There's certain people that I really like to follow. So it's really sifting through what's the content that I really do want to engage with, and give yourself a healthy boundary. Everything in life, like, you gotta be good stewards of your time. So I guess that would be
Wow.
I'd give.
It's great advice. Instead of succumbing to the infinite scroll,
Mhm.
uh, be a hunter gatherer kind of. I like your idea. Like, go in with a specific mission, like you do with shopping. Love
Yeah.
that. I also do that with shopping. But yeah, that's a great thought. So, Mark, where do you see Christians getting pulled off mission most when they're online? I mean, just to get started on that, like the tone people use, tribalism, people pursuing influence or clicks or likes. What are the red flags you see out there in our habits that we need to pay attention to in light of some of what Gloria even just said?
Oh wow, yeah, there are so many. Um, I think, first and foremost, there's an issue of pride that is connected to uh, social media in a way, comparison with others. David, I can't remember if you were at this retreat. It was in Hollywood with various like denominational social media influencers, and there was a Christian speaker there who did a devotion from Genesis 6 and the Tower of Babel, focusing in on the part they wanted to make a name for themselves.
Mm,
Mhm.
wow.
And I mean, you think of where a lot of us find ourselves on social media, that's our goal. We want to make a name for ourselves.
Yeah.
We want to make people look at us a certain way, look at our ministry a certain way, look at our denomination a certain way, or our church, or our profession, whatever it may be, and make a name for ourselves
Hmm.
instead of making a name for Him.
Mhm.
And I think, that's a huge red flag in Christian ministry, where an individual or organization, a network, becomes the focus rather than Jesus.
Yeah.
Um, Another would definitely be tribalism that you talked about. I mean, this is what social media does now.
Mhm.
It's
Hmm.
the algorithm wants to be addictive. It wants you to spend more time on it because that's how they make money. And how do they get you to spend more time there? They feed you the content that the algorithm thinks that you like.
Mhm.
And so instead of being exposed to a variety of viewpoints that really hones in a perspective. It really isolates our viewpoint within an algorithm to harden opinions, to make people seem like an other who have different opinions, to kind of create these scenarios where it's good and evil, where it really isn't. It's just a difference of opinion, maybe a minor theological difference or something that it really seems like, oh, this person is completely other or different. I think social media and the algorithms behind it really have the potential to lead us down a funnel of of hatred, of distance between even brothers and sisters in Christ, much less the people we're trying to risk, who are different in so many ways, but we have to look beyond those differences to bridge the gap with the gospel. There are a million different rabbit trails I could go down
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
dangers and red flags that exist.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. For sure. And you point out a lot of those, and I think we all have some of these concerns. People might maybe even be a little surprised, the two of you, this is kind of your primary gig, primary thing you're doing, or a big part of it. And it's a big part of what I do and have done too. And so it's interesting sometimes, people that work in it, but we also are like, hey, let's be cautious here too on our personal lives. And obviously the things we're doing, we're trying to change all of those dynamics you both just talked through. We're trying to counter that because people are already there, and we hope to uplift. And like you said, Mark pointed to Jesus. But I'd love both of you to talk about this. Maybe Gloria, you could talk first, and Mark as well. But what are some of the encouraging things about social media? Maybe, I mean, we're not on this stuff for no reason. There are really good things, and some people are having really good experiences. Some people are hunting and gathering really well, like your shopping practice, Gloria, online. So what do you see Christian leaders do, organizations, churches, individuals, where you think, oh, that's really good, and that's really healthy and helpful, and that's good not only for them as a user, but as a communicator or as somebody that's helping other people know what they care about?
I think I have the opportunity to kind of coach and train our global workers, so our missionaries that are about to go out and serve, and how they can communicate better, how they can stay in contact with their partners and their churches that are praying for them. And the first question I ask them is like, what is the Great Commission? Like, what did Jesus ask us to do? He asked us to go into all the world and tell people about this hope, right? Him. And I asked them the question, where's that one place where we just, with one click, can turn on and the whole world is pretty much found? And that's social media. So that's a beautiful benefit that we have.
Hmm.
And then just the reminder of, where does the light shine brightest? It's in the midst of darkness. So yeah, there is a lot of darkness out there in social media, but if we start to just hide ourselves and just say, you know what, I'm just not going to be a part of it because it's not worth it for my own soul, well, what do we really need to do? And this is where I admire global workers and missionaries. They're really putting their selfishness, you know, to the side, and they're putting themselves in context and in countries where that's not necessarily home. That's not where they feel the most comfortable, but they're doing it for the gospel. And so I kind of see social media in that lens. There's a beauty behind it, and we really need to spread the good news. I love, looking at other denominations or other churches, and when they're really thinking about the end user, the person on the other side rather than themselves, I think that's when they're really winning. What is in the world that Jesus provides comfort and truth and love? And what
Hmm.
was Jesus's last words? I pray that they would be one. So we have a mission as a church. We really need to unite rather than divide. And now that's a huge task, but that's his prayer for us. And so I think that's what we can really pray for, and use social media to our benefit, is to really meet the world in that one spot where it's at.
Great. Wonderful. Mark, what would you add on that?
Oh yeah, that's just beautifully put. I mean, it's our mission, and we could have kind of that Jonah response to where Nineveh is big, bad, and scary, and
Mhm.
so we don't want to engage. or we can engage and transform a culture.
Right.
I think, um, there are so many innovative approaches that are out there. I mean, you think of uh, what YouVersion is doing to accelerate Bible translation and simultaneous translation around the world. You think of uh, the opportunities to share the gospel with micro targeting, and there are just so many great opportunities that exist on social media, not to mention just on a personal level. Uh, think of how many people wake up and the first thing they see is their screen.
Right.
Uh, and all throughout the day, that screen is right in front of them. It's the second screen while they're maybe watching TV in the evening or right before they go to bed. And what if it's a message of hope that they see in that moment,
Hmm.
rather than a message of division? I mean, these are key moments in people's lives that this background filler of social media can kind of come to the front, and it's such a critical opportunity for us as believers to have something worthwhile for people in those moments.
I'd love
Well,
to.
yeah.
I just share a testimony real quick. So our family, we went to Poland recently on a mission trip, and we really connected with a couple of global workers there, and even some of the local churches there. And recently, there was just a testimony that was shared of an increase in the amount of people coming to the evangelical church. And when they started asking around, specifically this one person who ended up getting baptized, it was through a TikTok video where they shared the gospel. And so that's just a perfect example of like nothing's
Mm.
wasted. Like your content, I'd love to encourage this because there's times where on my personal social media account, I go back and forth. Should I make it a private account? Should I make it a public account? Like, what should I do here? And and just the encouragement of if you have a purpose behind why you have everybody has to have a purpose for something. And so you're thinking about your living room and how you're decorating your living room. What do you want people to feel when they come into your house? Do you want to show off what you have? Do you want them to see all the goodies that you have? Or do you want them to feel comfortable and that they make good memories there with you? And I think that's kind of on the flip side. If you're going to have a social media account, if you're going to be using it, what do you want people to feel when they're encountering your feed, your page? Is it, you know, they you're the center of everything, or is it something that they leave feeling better after they engage with your content?
It's great advice, and I mean, I guess for me, beyond even all you've just said, a very simple one I've noticed is, like my wife does a great job about this, about what you just talked about, Gloria, about not making it all about herself too, is she'll sometimes just ask a question. She did it this week, like, what are you cooking that you're excited to cook, and then all these people were talking about these cool recipes. Some people even put pictures in. Other times she'll, just ask a question. It always reminds me, like, and I look back on the things I've enjoyed most dialoguing about on social media has not been telling my opinion, but asking other people their opinion
Yeah.
or their experience or something they love or something they share or something they recommend. And usually you get a lot of humor in there and people are having fun. And that's not even necessarily the high-minded mission hope kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but it is more rewarding and meaningful and natural,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to spouting off or just sharing something else that somebody else made,
Mm-hmm.
or that a robot made. And I think that it's helpful to do that, as well. But then I do think as much as possible, like you said, Mark, for us to, when we can, point to hope and give people an opportunity for that and to redeem this space. So I do want to take a pause a moment to mention one of our sponsors for this podcast, and that's Wesley Seminary. One of the things I love about Wesley Seminary is they train leaders who serve in the real world, not just the classroom. If you're a listener and you've been thinking about deepening your ministry or just growing your understanding of scripture and leadership, check out Wesley Seminary at Indiana Wesleyan University. You can find programs, details, all that at indwest.edu/seminary. Well, Mark, I want to ask you, if the average Christian that's just listening to this and they've got a couple social media accounts, maybe they used to have 7 and now they have 4, or what, they've trimmed it back, but they're still using a few. What do you think are some lessons that they might learn from someone like you, in the fact that, you're running these, important accounts on behalf of a whole church and many, many churches? And what would help in that in terms of planning and intentionality that we could apply to our communication in social media?
Sure, I would echo Gloria again, our expert here, that everything you do has to be with purpose. And
Mm.
so know why you're doing what you're doing and let that purpose shine through. Also, be in the moment. This is a big danger that I see with some of my colleagues who will, uh, they're prepared people, and so they'll schedule content 6 months or so out. One of my friends schedules content 8 months out.
Wow.
Which, it's great to be prepared, but also be in the moment, be able to speak to what's going on. I've seen so many embarrassing situations where people have had content scheduled way out in advance and it's been out of sight, out of mind. And something comes up culturally, and people think they're speaking to that event that just popped up, when really it's something that has been scheduled months and months in advance, but they weren't in the moment to reinterpret it in a way that would be relevant to the time period. Be present in the moment, be aware of what's going on culturally and how others may receive the message and how you're wording that. Also, the main advantage of social media is two-way communication, and if you're only using it as a one-way broadcast, you're losing out the major strength of the social media and digital platforms. So find a way to engage people in conversation, just like you're saying with your wife, asking people questions and engaging on personal topics. If you're not engaging in that, you're really kind of going back in time to a one-way communications
Mm.
philosophy, when the communication could be so much deeper. You could learn so much more and have a deeper impact in people's lives.
How about you, Gloria? What are some tips and tricks you've learned, things that you did advise people on? What could people learn from you?
Yeah, I mean, when speaking about the just the movement of Converge and itself, we try as much as we can, since we're more on the national side of things, to let the churches champion when it comes to certain content, and we come and kind of reinforce that. So we're not trying to, clutter with too much content or even compete. So I think in that way, when you're working for an organization or for a business, for a company, think about all the different um, social media channels that you actually have, and what are the specifications that you want to share on those things, right? So we choose certain things for when we're doing long form video, and then we choose certain content for a form video. Different things like that. And then also the collaboration side of things. When we're in the church, it's not a competition. Like, how can we really um, celebrate partnerships with other organizations that are doing something really well, and say this actually blesses the entire body. Um, so I think that's just one piece of advice. Again, I echo what Mark is saying when it comes to scheduling. We like to try our best to look at our calendar as a movement, where we're going, what's the emphasis of that year, how can we really celebrate that? But the tension there, again, is like what's happening culturally. Um, and not forgetting that just because things are scheduled, that people might be trying to communicate with you or talk to you, and how can we be better at responding to those messages or hearing what people actually want and not just assuming that because it benefits the plan of the organization that that's going to benefit the body.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, good. And I mean, I've even noticed that as an end user, like if everybody's talking about one thing that day or that week, usually a national event, something that would be on the news, um, sometimes, for me, I've even said something when I wasn't aware of that thing and everyone thought I was talking about that thing.
Mhm.
Or I'll drop a quote in from C.S. Lewis or something, and people think I'm putting it there because of this other thing.
Mhm.
And social media can act a little bit like a mob that way, where they're like, "Oh, go get him now." And so I've learned to sometimes when everybody's talking about it, I either need to meaningfully and hope with Christ's hope engage it directly, or kind of stay away from it for like 5 days. Like just take a beat here, so people don't jump in on the comments and hijack it to another direction too. So Mark, I want to ask you about the Assemblies of God and kind of your role. Assemblies of God, was started more than 100 years ago with just about 300 people, but now it's like 80 million people worldwide. And more than that, I think. And most everyone agrees that you're the largest Pentecostal denomination in the world. So what you have to deal with is not what I have to deal with in terms of the diversity and breadth globally and even within North America of opinion and perspectives and cultures in the AOG. So, I mean, all of us, everyone that even listening to this, we have some diversity in our lives and we have different perspectives, even around, a holiday table in our family. So how do you deal with that with such breadth? I guess I'm just saying your job sounds hard, Mark. Can you help all of us know how to communicate with the diversity of opinions we engage with, since we all deal with that this much and you deal with it this much?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, in the US, the Assemblies of God is 54% under the age of 35, and we're 44%, well, actually 45% non-white ethnic minority in the US. And so, there's a large amount of age diversity and ethnic diversity, and also uh, gender diversity and leadership. 25% of our ministers are, are women. Um, one intentional focus that we have is our national office is located in Springfield, Missouri, which is a great city, not necessarily known for its diversity in Springfield, Missouri. But we have to be intentional in the way that we build out our teams. For example, our AG News team, we have freelancers, freelance writers that are spread across the country intentionally, that provide different perspectives geographically, ethnically, even the languages that are their first language that influences the way that they write and the way that they interview. And so we try to build out those teams intentionally to provide different perspectives in what we do. We have a permanent seat on kind of the listening arms that deal with diversity issues in the Assemblies of God, and so various things have come out of that have been uh, really impactful, such as our deaf community. Hey, can we make sure every video has captioning on it?
Mm.
And it's like, okay, captioning's good for multiple reasons, but little things like that, just because we have an ear out, we're getting input that shapes the way that we do things. We're trying to build out teams of translation volunteers, kind of modeled after what YouVersion's been able to do with translation volunteers to be able to have two-way communication in articles and social media posts. I say two-way because we not only want English content to be translated out in other areas, we want uh, multilingual content to come in and be translated into English as well. So that perspective is going both ways. But there's a lot of strong effort to make sure that the diversity of the fellowship is being reflected in the communications that we have.
Well, helpful, helpful. So, I wanted to follow up then, Gloria, on something you mentioned earlier about the missions trip to Poland, and
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about that from your perspective. And that engagement, and I knew about your trip, and we were praying for you going and your family. So, what did you learn from that, and wonder about what you learned from that trip, and then also how you use social media before the trip and then after? Because I think a lot of people might be doing something they want to tell people about. They want to share people about their experience.
Mhm.
I was noting how you were doing that, and you were putting up some videos even because you were raising funds to go, and that might be relatable for people on how you did that. What did you learn from those experiences?
Yeah. So when we were first approached to go to Poland, it was for a regional gathering that all of our Euromed missionaries just come together once every 2 years and really get poured into and supported because they're all scattered in different areas. And so when we were invited and told, hey, but you got to raise support for your whole family to go, I was like, oh, great. I don't know if we'll all be able to go. But honestly, I felt this impression from the Lord, like, I want you to do this. And I want you to, I mean, it's going to be like a super small, you know, perspective from what an actual global worker goes through and constantly raising support and having partners and things like that. But it really opened up my eyes and understanding for what partnership really is. And so, from the start, it was thinking, okay, so what are some ways that we can communicate? Starting with this helps me, like I said, I help global workers talking through how can you communicate better. So it's easy to say it when you've never done it, but when you got to do it, and I had to get on my phone and say, okay, let me go through my list and text some people and tell them what we're doing. But number one, I learned if God is in it and asking you to do a challenging thing, you will be surprised at the conversation that you're most skeptical about opening up is the one that like really needed to happen. So there was one connection that through a text message um, of a mom of a student that I led, back when I was in Indianapolis, who ended up being here at the same time in Orlando, Florida, and was going through a difficult time. And I was able to connect with her on that. So that's just one little note there for difficult times when God's asking you to do some things that are not in your comfort zone. But then it was the strategy of, you know, the way I use my social media is it's my family scrapbook. So whoever is a part of my social media really loves us, right? So let's bring you in on this journey. And so we started with this introduction of like, hey, we've got some news, and really a lot of people don't even know what I do because I don't really talk about it on my personal page, and just introducing them to how much I love my role and how hungry I am to learn how to do my job better. And in order to do my job better, I got to understand the people I'm serving. So it kind of started with that. Then also introducing the fact that the good news is my whole family gets to go as well. And so teaching my kids along the way and showing others how I was teaching them the importance of partnership, the importance of thank you, why we're asking people to raise support. It's not just like, hey, we want money so we can go on a trip to Europe. Like we're going to Poland to tell people about Jesus, to pour into missionaries and all of that. So that was really fun to kind of engage in that process. And uh, we raised the full amount in less than 2 weeks. And it was just a testament to like God's faithfulness. I've got such deeper relationships with our missionaries, and we got to meet like a local worship team. And then this is the last like personal story I'm going to share. When we were on our way back from Poland, my sister-in-law, who's at a church here in Orlando, she texted me and she said, hey, today after church, this woman came up to me and asked for prayer. And when I asked her what I could pray for her for, she said, I just moved to Poland, my husband and I feel lonely. Like I need a church. What can I do? I don't go to that church. When she texts me that, I'm like, I know who to connect her with. And literally, like, it's just God is so faithful that in the smallest things like social media, and then in personal text messages and in our yeses, like he he connects the pieces for even like the one lonely person who just, moved to Poland. So I don't know if that answers your question. I went
No, I think it's super helpful. And I think I know my family, we spent some time in another country and raised some funds for what we were doing a couple of years ago. And that was it is different too, Gloria, even when you're supporting people that do that all the time,
Yeah.
to then be like, oh, now I have to do that. And afterwards I realized, no, now I got to do that. I
Yeah.
got to do that because so many
Exactly.
people get to participate. And even if I was a millionaire and could have just paid for it on my own, I would have lost something
Yeah.
by other people not being involved in it.
Right.
And I know our family loved kind of tracking along with what you guys were doing and feeling a part of it more because of that. So that's
Yeah,
helpful. So
just jump
yeah,
in one more thing, because I even remember asking, like, a couple of family members who are not believers, and, something inside of me was just like, "Just send it anyways, because 'cause they're gonna get my newsletters, they're gonna get," and they were the ones that gave the most, which I thought was so, not because I want what they were giving, but it was really just an opportunity. I feel like who knows what God will do
yeah.
through that?
Never say someone's no for them.
Right.
Yeah, right. And then they got to participate in all that and learn. That's so great. Well, on that note, it makes some sense to mention another one of our sponsors, and that's Global Marketplace Multipliers. And a lot of us, of course, want our work to matter, not just on Sunday mornings. And that's where Global Marketplace Multipliers comes in. They help believers live and share their faith right where they work and help people to do that around the world too. You might wonder, oh, I'd love to be a missionary, but I think I'm called to my work. Well, it's actually your career that might get you out to the mission field in a creative way. So go to gponline.org/GMM, and you might find the missions closer than you think. So I want to ask you, Mark, in a bigger picture here, what are some practices that help you keep social media from becoming spiritually draining or distracting? What are some patterns that you would say would make it more Christ-like and constructive for someone listening to this now?
Sure. I mean, one basic thing is having boundaries. It's so tempting to just be glued to your device. And I think, that's something you had to learn early on in this role. There's always going to be an alert, there's always going to be an update, there's always going to be a notification coming in. What are the boundaries that you set to be able to handle that appropriately? Is it really uh, going to influence someone if I spend these next 3 hours with my kids with no distraction and they wait 3 hours to get this response? I think set appropriate boundaries, because if you're glued to your device and you always feel the need to be uh, glued to what's happening in social media, you're going to miss out on real life around you, and it's going to impact real relationships. Um, I think that would be the most key piece for especially people within this space who do social media, digital media professionally. Learn when and how to disconnect.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned notifications too, Mark, and I just think on a pretty basic level, I think most of these companies want notifications for their reasons. And most of us don't need notifications for much of anything. And, even texts and emails, there can be a problem with that, even though that's a lot of our work life is taking place on there. Like you said, someone can wait till tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. to get a reply on that email. Honestly, they could wait 2 days to most of those emails. And so I don't need notifications for my emails. I'm getting into that for work. I don't need notifications for any of these social media stuff. And I actually have also a tip that I've used is to pull the social media off of my phone. That sounds insane for a lot of people because they're like, what's a phone for? And so for me, I now have no social media on my phone. I only have it on my laptop. And that helps me have a great boundary. And so then I float in there and once I'm on my laptop, but then I'm not like when I'm hanging out with my wife, I'm not like looking at my Facebook notifications or whatever. And I've even deleted several social media accounts I used to have, where I just realized, boy, when I balance these things all out, I feel like this one's a little more life-giving. I'm finding things that are either hopeful and Christ-like or just funny, as opposed to over here, I'm finding something that after I'm using it, it's like, oh, gives me that horrible feeling. So, how about you, Gloria? What would you tag on of any helpful practices that someone might consider doing when it comes to social media?
Yeah, I mean, as simple as like, when you wake up in the morning, Bible before phone, I've heard that said all the time. And just being present in the moment. I also started not sleeping with my phone next to me in my room. So I literally put it in the bathroom and I sleep way better. Like it's the craziest thing. And I wake up before my alarm clock goes off because it's just like a healthy rest. We don't know what it does to our mind, even just knowing how close it is to us, which is crazy. But just something as simple as that. Start with don't touch it in the morning. Do something else, seek God first. And then right before you go to bed, give yourself a good buffer time of not even having it around you. You can do it. You can do it without your phone. You can do it without social media for a little bit.
For sure, for sure. Well, bonus question for you, Gloria. This isn't about social media at all, but I've just noticed you served under a key transition in two different denominations. You were with the Wesleyan Church when Joanne Lyon, she was the first woman general superintendent of not only the Wesleyan Church, but the first sole leader of a conservative denomination in the states that I know of.
Yep.
And then you also there with Converge with the first African-American president of Converge, John Jenkins. So I'm wondering, what did you learn from those two major firsts, people that kind of broke a ceiling there? And as a follow-up, I just want to know, should really Gloria Lopez get credit for these two big transitions?
Oh no. I mean, on a personal note, I know that it was all God because I mean, Dave, where I came from and where I started, and the seat that I'm sitting in now, like I don't even like to put I don't like titles and I don't even like to put that out there. Like the work I get to do, it's really because of the team and I'm thankful for it. But I think working both under Dr. Lyon and President Jenkins is just a reminder that what God plans and what he wants and what he calls people to and how he works through people, it's his plan that happens. Like we can have an idea, we can have a plan. Um, but really it's the encouragement of if he's called these people to lead at that time, it's for such a time as this. And so that's given me courage in a lot of situations where I'm like, why am I in this seat? And I hope that's a reminder to everybody else. But also I've learned so much from them. They both super humble. I remember working under Dr. Lyons. She remembered everyone's name to this day. Like she'll write me on social media or her husband. And same with President Jenkins. Like if you see him on the screen, it can seem so intimidating. I remember listening to a podcast with, I think it was Priscilla Shire and Lecrae, and all of a sudden they mention, oh yeah, President John K. Jenkins. I'm like, that's my boss. Like he's on a pod. But they both led with so much humility. And it's just a reminder, again, like I said, for me personally, selfishly, that God is the one who places you where you need to be at. So, and most of the time when you feel like you're not supposed to be in that seat, that's probably because God is really working, in your life. And that's a good place to be. So.
Well, wonderful. Well, I'm so grateful that both of you are in the seats you're in and including the seat for the podcast today. I'm excited you guys got to join. This is fun to talk to you about. We could go on and on about this. You have a wealth of information, but I thought it'd be good to give a taste for those in interest. And social media is a big part of our world and our lives, and good to be intentional and have a purpose, like you both talked about earlier, as we use it. So I'm grateful to have Mark Forrester here, a little bit of longer bio for each of you here so people know a little more about you, the Chief Communications Officer for the General Council of the Assemblies of God. He is the general editor as well of Trending Up Social Media Strategies for Today's Church, which is helpful, written by a bunch of social media gurus and communication types like him. And he convenes those kind of people for these super cool learning meetups as well. You can find the Assemblies of God online at ag.org. and their social channels at Assemblies of God USA on Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. And Gloria Lopez is our other guest today. She's the marketing, she doesn't like titles, but I'm going to use it anyway, the director of marketing and communications at Converge, a movement of independent churches working together to see lives changed by Jesus, person by person, worldwide. That was well written. You might have written that. That's good. Converge may date back to 1956, but today it's known for its innovative work in church planning, leadership development, and global missions. Gloria here does the brand, the marketing, communication strategies that helps everybody in their movement tell their stories a little bit better, maybe more meaningful and compelling ways. So find Converge at converge.org. And on social channels at either Converge Worldwide or Converge WW, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, good places to start there, and a lot of other places. And to you, our listeners, or even the viewers at YouTube, thanks for tuning in to Not That Kind of Christian. If you like today's episode, share it with a friend, give it a review, get it out there in the ether, use social media and the ways we've talked about, if that helps. And if you want to find me, you can always go to the show notes and find more info, or find me at daviddrury.substack.com, where I write a couple times a week. Big thanks to Seth Strand, our producer, who makes this podcast possible, and to our executive producer, Jamil Acevedo, executive vice president at Wesley Seminary at Indiana Wesleyan. I'll see you all next time. Thanks for joining.